Welcome to the complete story for Wolfenstein: The New Order. Now before going forward, I do want to clarify. Yes, this is a sequel to a game that came out in 2009, but you don't need to play that game to know what's going on. I honestly didn't even realize that this was a sequel until I researched it because I didn't play the 2009 game. Also, there is a branching element in this storyline that is selected by the player. The choice that we're going to go with for this story is the one that we picked on our playthrough. The overall story doesn't change much though, so don't worry, you aren't missing anything by us picking one guy. Now for today's question. I personally loved this game, but did you enjoy it? Did you think that it was a great reboot / remake / sequel to the series? As usual, if you learned something new or you enjoy this story, leave us a like as it really helps us out. 3 years after the events of the previous game, the Nazis have advanced their technology, somehow turning the tide against the Allies. In July of 1946, Captain B.J. Blazkowicz is helping a massive Ally raid against General Wilhelm Death's Head Strauss. Accompanying BJ is his friend Fergus the pilot and young Private Wyatt. After a pretty epic push against the fortress, all three men get captured by the General. General Death's Head turns to BJ and tells him to choose. He's going to cut up one of his friends. So which one will the captain pick? Struggling to make the decision, BJ decides to spare the young Private Wyatt and sacrifices Fergus. Death's Head cuts up Fergus right in front of BJ and then walks out of the room before turning on the incinerator to ensure that BJ and Wyatt will be cooked alive. Acting quickly, they break free of their bonds and try to stop the incinerator from going off, but they only succeed in delaying it before there is a massive explosion in the fortress that throws both Wyatt and BJ out of the nearby window. As they're both being thrown, a piece of metal hits BJ in the back of the head, embedding itself in his brain. This places him into a vegetative state, and after being picked up by a fishing boat, he's brought to a mental asylum in Poland. He's there, watching, aware, but he can't move. Years pass in the asylum as he watches Anya, the head nurse, care for him. He also watches as the patients are escorted out of the building by the Nazis on a regular basis. This goes on for 14 years, bringing us to 1960. The Nazis arrive and are ordered to shut down the facility, but they end up killing all the patients and killing Anya's parents, who are the doctors, and then hauling off Anya. That's it. Something snaps in BJ, but in a good way. He gets back the use of his body, and after 14 years, he stands up and stabs a Nazi in the throat. He stumbles around the facility thanks to his legs being jelly at this point, but ultimately, he saves Anya and kills every single Nazi there except for the one he's going to be interrogating later, and the two of them drive to her grandparents' house. Once they get to her grandparents' house, BJ is finally informed of what happened after he failed the Death's Head fortress so many years ago. The Nazis won the war in 1948 with their crazy technology, forcing the Americans to surrender. They also rounded up the last of the resistance, but BJ learns from the captured Nazi that they're being held in the Berlin prison. He then takes a chainsaw to the guy and chops him in half, because that's how we do it, America. Anya and BJ are helped out by her grandparents in escaping the area, and eventually he frees the resistance fighters from the Berlin prison. Amazingly, it turns out that Wyatt is in the resistance and he can lead BJ and Anya back to the headquarters. And once they get there, they find out that the resistance leader is Caroline Becker, the leader of the resistance from the previous games. Though, now she's paralyzed from her injuries in previous missions. The resistance goes into action, trying to learn what they can about the Nazis' operation, and it turns out that they're relying on the use of an improved concrete to build their cities in weeks. But someone has been sabotaging them, and after cross-referencing who's been captured, they decide that Set Roth must be in the concrete facility. BJ breaks into the labor camp and finds out that the Nazis are using a technology made by him and the other Jewish scientists in a secret order. Set agrees to give the resistance the location of the vault where they kept the worst of their inventions, if BJ destroys the entire labor camp. Well, of course BJ manages to kill every Nazi there and gets everyone out and back to the resistance headquarters. Here, Set explains that the Nazis managed to steal much of their technology, but the worst of their inventions are being kept in a secret vault that the Nazis haven't found yet. When asked why they were inventing these horrible weapons that allowed the Nazis to win the war, Set explained that they weren't built for the war, they were built for the sake of creation. The scientists made these to get closer to God through the acts of creation. And since they were never intended to be a weapon once they were created, their purpose was fulfilled and they were locked away. BJ goes to work. First, they have to go to Set's secret vault to acquire a rather nifty weapon. They then assault a bridge using this super weapon and acquire the lab coat of a Nazi who is on his way to the lunar base. What's kept at a lunar base? Well, of course, nuclear launch codes. So BJ hitches a ride on the next rocket going to the moon and kills a rather large chunk of the lunar Nazis before hitching a ride back to Earth. Once they get the super weapon and the nuclear launch codes, it's time to begin the final assault. Thus begins the massive assault on Death's Head's compound to rescue everybody inside and then blow up the facility. BJ manages to climb to the top of the tower as the Resistance is using the secret weapon to wipe out every floor below this. It is here that Death's Head and BJ have their reunion. Death's Head shows BJ his latest creation, a super robot powered by the brain of a human being. And just to make things more interesting, Death's Head pulls out the brain of Fergus and pops it in the robot. Yep, the friend that BJ decided to sacrifice 14 years ago is now the robot that he has to fight off. The robotic version of his friend chases him around for a minute, but eventually BJ shorts out the robot body and rips his brain out. Then his friend just asks for death. He begs for death, and BJ grants his wish. But Death's Head isn't done yet. Meet Mecha Death's Head! The final fight begins as BJ uses everything at his disposal to defeat the giant robot body that Death's Head is riding in. And after defeating it, BJ pulls Death's Head from the robot and stabs him repeatedly. But Death's Head laughs, saying that BJ is just so gullible. While holding a grenade! Boom, the grenade goes off, killing Death's Head, and BJ has to crawl away, holding his highly injured body, trying to get to the nearest opening that he can to see if the mission is successful. And looking through a missing piece of the wall, he can see the Resistance fighters are running to the helicopter. They manage to rescue everybody, and they're yelling in his earpiece, "Are you clear? Are you clear, BJ?" He sees that everyone is safe, and he's the only one left, and he gives them the clearance to destroy the entire facility, knowing he'll die with it. Did they destroy it? Well, we're unsure, but if you hang around till after the credits, you do hear a helicopter getting louder. Maybe it managed to pick up BJ before the explosion. Well, that's it for Wolfenstein: The New Order, and if you're interested in BJ's previous missions, let me know in the comments down below. We have a few games to do first, but we can definitely come back to explaining how he got to this point in the storyline. On that note, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys next time here at Eligible Monster.